Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. When I turned 65, I threw a party for the family. No one came. That same day, my daughter-in-law, the cake sat there, untouched. Chocolate ganache, homemade, with the same buttercream lettering I'd used on all of my son's birthdays growing up. I'd piped it carefully. Happy 65th, Mum. The kitchen smelled of sugar and vanilla and lemon-scented floor cleaner. I'd even ironed the tablecloth. And no one came. I told myself it was just bad timing. That they got caught in traffic. That maybe Jamie had a game or Emma had a migraine. That maybe they just forgot. But the truth arrived at 7:13 p.m. in the form of a single text message. Sorry, been a crazy day. We'll make it up to you. Hope you enjoyed the cake. The smiley face, that little yellow nothing, was the part that finally broke me. I sat down in the chair beside the empty table and stared at my phone. There were no missed calls, no voicemails, no, can we reschedule? Just silence. 65 years old, and I felt like I'd been erased. Jamie is my only child. He used to call me Mama Bear when he was little. We used to make pancakes on Sundays and go to flea markets just to find old books. He was my world after his father died. And when he met Emma, that quick-talking girl with glossy hair and big city shoes, I told myself to be open. I told myself change is good. Emma didn't like me. I could feel it from the beginning, though she smiled politely and always brought a hostess gift. A candle, a box of macarons, a slim little bottle of rosemary olive oil. But it was the way she said my name, too formally, too often, that made it clear I wasn't her kind of people. After they got married, the visits got shorter, then fewer, then stopped entirely. She said Jamie was really focused on his work, and I shouldn't take it personally. Then she stopped replying altogether. Still, I held on. I sent Christmas cards, birthday cards. I knit a blue baby blanket when I heard she was pregnant, even though no one told me directly. I had to find out from Margaret across the street, who saw Emma waddling into a prenatal yoga class. I never met my grandson. I didn't even know his name. At first, I thought maybe I'd done something, said something wrong. But when I asked Jamie, in a carefully worded email after 3 previous ones went unanswered, he just said, "It's complicated right now, Mum. Please give us space." Space turned into silence. Silence turned into years. On my 65th birthday, I still set the table for 4. Me, Jamie, Emma, and the baby. I lit the candles anyway. And when they melted down to little puddles of wax and hope, I blew them out myself. Happy birthday to me? The knock came 2 weeks later. It was a Sunday. Rainy. I was in my robe, folding laundry, when I heard it. Not the mail slot, not a package. A real knock. 3 quick taps. I opened the door, and there he was. Tall, pale, nervous, maybe 19. Holding a small manila envelope and a blue hoodie soaked through. "Hi," he said, voice cracking slightly. Are you Linda Carroll?" I nodded slowly. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for miles. I think you're my grandma." I didn't move. I didn't speak. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I registered that the boy had my father's chin, sharp and narrow, and his eyes, that dark moss green, just like Jamie's when he was little. "I found you through 23andMe," he said, voice rushing now. I didn't even know I had another side of the family. My mom never told me. But I ran the test a few weeks ago and you came up. Like, really close. He held out the envelope, hands shaking slightly. I took it. Inside was the printout. Shared DNA, 25.2%. Predicted relationship, grandparent. My knees went weak. I gripped the doorframe. Your name came up, and I looked you up. And then I found your address on this weird genealogy site. I know it sounds creepy, but... He paused, eyes wide. I just needed to know. He looked at me. Did you know about me? That night, I sat with the DNA printout in one hand and a half-empty glass of boxed wine in the other. I stared out the window. The rain hadn't let up. It pattered against the glass like soft knuckles. My mind raced, rewound, tried to make sense of the timeline. Jamie hadn't spoken to me in years. Emma had cut all ties. But she had a child whose birth I wasn't allowed to witness. And now that child, Leo, had found me on his own. He wasn't a baby anymore. He was almost 20, a college freshman studying digital media. He liked photography and ramen noodles and skateboarding. He talked fast and fidgeted with the sleeves of his hoodie. But most of all, he was kind. And he'd been lied to. We met again the next day. I made scones. He took 2. Better than Starbucks, he said, mouth full. Over tea, I told him everything I remembered about Jamie as a boy. The time he tried to rescue a frog from the driveway and cried when it didn't make it. The way he used to line up his stuffed animals before bed so none of them felt left out. Leo laughed. He sounds softer than I imagined. I asked about Emma. He hesitated. Then, she's great at work. Everyone loves her. She's just different at home. When I asked if he'd ever seen his birth certificate, he shook his head. Mom said it got lost in a move. Something twisted in my gut. Later that week, I went to the records office. It took 2 forms of ID and a $25 fee. When I got the certificate, my hands went cold. It listed James Carroll as the father. But the date didn't match. Not by a long shot. Leo had been born 3 months before Emma and Jamie's wedding. And Jamie was studying abroad the entire year. I remember. I still had the postcards. I made a copy. I sent it to Jamie. No note, no message, just the paper. He called me 3 days later. First time in 4 years. Mom, he said, voice hoarse. I didn't know. I didn't sleep much the night Jamie called. Not from anxiety. No, that had already settled into something quieter, duller, but from a strange, unwelcome peace. The kind that comes when someone says, I didn't know, and you finally believe them. But it still doesn't unbreak the thing they shattered. I lay awake, staring at the shadow of the ceiling fan, arms crossed over my chest, like I was keeping myself from floating off. Outside, a wind had picked up, rustling the blinds. In the silence, I realized it had been 4 years since I'd heard my son's voice with that much weight. Like something real was finally cracking through. But it wasn't the voice of a son, not anymore. It was the voice of a man who'd been lied to, and who was only just realizing he hadn't been the only one. He came to the house 2 days later. I'd just set out the recycling and was clipping rosemary from the front garden when I saw the familiar blue Toyota pull into the driveway. I froze. My hands still smelled of damp earth and lemon balm. I hadn't expected him to follow up with anything. I'd prepared myself for another disappearing act, a quiet fade into guilt. But there he was, Jamie, wearing that grey jacket I'd bought him before he left for college. A little tighter now, eyes heavier, his walk uncertain. I didn't move at first. I just looked at him, taking him in like a stranger I used to know. Hi, Mom, he said, soft as a memory. And like a current pulling from some deeper place, I heard myself say it back. Hi, Jamie. We sat at the old kitchen table. The one with the faded floral runner. the one where I'd once bandaged scraped knees, paid bills, and waited for birthday calls that never came. I poured us both some tea. Earl Grey, still his favourite, I remembered. He didn't say much at first, just let the steam rise between us like a curtain slowly parting. Then, finally, she lied to me. He looked down at his hands, rubbing his thumb across the worn edge of the mug. I was so sure Leo was mine. I didn't think to question it. I was just in love with her, caught up in everything. She told me he came early, 7 weeks early, she said. It didn't seem impossible. His voice cracked on that word. Impossible. I got back from Barcelona, and she had already moved in with her mum. She said she wanted stability during the pregnancy. I didn't think twice. I was 23, just happy to be part of something. He looked up at me then, and it was the same look from when he was 5, when he broke the neighbour's window with a baseball. Remorse, confusion, that childlike plea to make it make sense. I didn't know what I didn't know, he whispered, but I should have. I wanted to tell him he wasn't to blame, that people believe the ones they love, even when it costs them. But there was still a corner of me, that aching, sharp edge, that wanted him to feel it, just a little. The abandonment, the cold years, the way his silence had hollowed me out. So instead of forgiveness, I offered truth. You left me behind, I said quietly. Maybe not all at once, but piece by piece. Emma didn't have to push very hard. You were already drifting. Jamie flinched, but he didn't defend himself. I know, he said. I thought I was doing what she needed, what Leo needed. I thought giving you space was keeping the peace. He looked around the kitchen. His eyes landed on the birthday card from Margaret still pinned to the fridge. I didn't realize I was erasing you. That night, after he left, I sat alone in the garden, wrapped in an old shawl. The rosemary I'd clipped still sat in the bowl beside me. The air smelled like rain and forgiveness that hadn't landed yet. I thought of Leo, of his unsure voice, his wide eyes, his hands trembling as he passed me that manila envelope. He had her nose, Emma's. But everything else was Jamie. The tilt of his smile, the way his brow furrowed when he concentrated. What kind of boy grows up not knowing half of who he is? What kind of mother tells her son that the story is complete when half the pages are missing? The thought of Emma carefully building a version of life where I didn't exist made my skin prickle. And yet, I was no longer interested in punishing her. I was interested in restoring what she tried to steal. Leo started coming by more often. Sometimes unannounced, sometimes with pie from the bakery downtown, or a film camera slung around his neck. He told me about his major, digital storytelling with a minor in visual anthropology. Basically, he said with a grin, I study people who study people. I showed him the scrapbook I'd kept of Jamie's childhood. His face lit up like it had been starved for proof. You kept all of this? Every ticket stub, every macaroni Valentine's Day card, every letter from camp. He traced a wrinkled Polaroid with a careful finger. I always thought my family just didn't take many pictures, he said softly. My mom said cameras weren't really her thing. I bit my lip. Cameras weren't, but memories were mine. One day, I offered to teach him how to bake. A real cake. Not boxed mix, not store-bought. Flour, sugar, eggs. The slow alchemy of love. He said yes, and we spent the afternoon elbows deep in batter. I watched him stir too quickly, then too slowly, crack eggs awkwardly, sprinkle too much cinnamon. But he laughed, and so did I. When the cake came out, a little lopsided, he insisted on icing it anyway. He wrote, "Thanks, Grandma," with a crooked smiley face at the end. I didn't have the heart to tell him the letters were uneven. It was perfect. 2 days later, Jamie returned, His face was drawn, the way people look when they've been living in motel rooms and making too many calls to lawyers. She's trying to spin it, he said, pacing. Telling friends I've lost it, that I'm turning on her because I'm having a midlife crisis. Did you tell her about the DNA test? He nodded. She called it inconclusive, claimed you must have signed up under false info, that it's probably a glitch. My mouth fell open. He gave a bitter laugh. She said, "We both know your mother's always had a flair for the dramatic." Something hot flared up in me. Not just rage, something deeper. Grief, maybe, for the years wasted, the milestones I missed, the version of myself she painted in my own son's mind. "She's trying to erase me," I whispered. "Even now." Jamie looked down. She already did. I didn't cry in front of Jamie. I waited until after he left, until the door clicked shut and I heard his car pull away. Then I sat in the same kitchen chair I'd used to teach him how to tie his shoes, and I let it come. Slowly, quietly, like a faucet someone forgot to turn off. I cried not just for the years, not just for Leo, but for the version of me I now knew Emma had fabricated. I used to imagine them talking about me behind closed doors. I'd picture Emma sighing, her hand on her forehead, telling Jamie, "She means well, but she's exhausting." I'd imagine him agreeing, trying to keep the peace. But now I knew it wasn't just silence. It was narrative. She didn't just exclude me. She rewrote me. I was the overbearing mother, the dramatic mother, the inconvenient mother. And Jamie, who once believed I hung the moon, had stopped correcting her. It made me question every moment I had held back. Every time I didn't call, out of respect. Every time I sent a card and got no reply, but whispered to myself, "Don't make it about you." Every single time. I chose grace over confrontation. And now I wondered if all it ever did was give her more room to build a wall in my place. I needed air. I threw on my coat and walked. No destination, just motion. The neighborhood was quiet. The kind of Sunday quiet that feels like everyone else is in a better movie than you. I passed children drawing chalk on the sidewalk, a teenager mowing a lawn, a couple walking their dog, hands brushing like new lovers. And I hated them all for just a moment. Because none of them were living in a world where their only child had been turned against them. Margaret saw me from her porch. She waved, then tilted her head. "Linda, you all right?" I hadn't meant to stop, but her voice caught me, so I walked over. She poured 2 glasses of iced tea without asking. She always had a pitcher on hand. We sat under the awning while the wind whispered through her wind chimes. "I'm guessing this isn't a social call," she said gently. I told her everything, from the DNA test to Emma's denial to Jamie's guilt. Margaret listened without interrupting. Only once did she mutter, "That little viper," under her breath. When I finished, I expected her to hug me or say something sympathetic. But she just asked, "What are you going to do now?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, leaning forward, "you've been done to for years. What are you going to do back?" I hesitated. "I'm not interested in revenge." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Then call it restoration. Call it reclaiming the narrative." I smiled faintly. "Sounds like something from one of your book clubs." "It is," she smirked. "But it's also truth. You don't need to destroy anyone, Linda. You just need to be seen." It was a strange seed to plant, but it took root. That night, I pulled out a dusty box from the back of my closet. Inside were dozens of letters, cards, photos, all the proof of the woman I had been. The mother I had been. I sorted them carefully, scanned them, wrote notes, built timelines, cross-referenced dates. I wasn't sure what I was doing exactly. only that it felt like gathering bricks for a wall I was finally ready to build myself. A week later, Leo showed up with a camera. "Got a class project," he said. "We're supposed to tell a story in 5 frames." I laughed. "Only 5? That's hardly fair." He grinned. "I was thinking we could cheat a little." He followed me around the kitchen, snapping photos while I baked. I pretended to be annoyed, but it reminded me of Jamie as a boy, hiding behind the curtains and jumping out with a plastic camera, yelling, "Smile!" I asked what kind of story he wanted to tell. "One about memory," he said, "and how sometimes you have to dig to find the real version." He paused. "One that feels like home, even if it's new." Later, while I was washing up, Leo sat at the table scrolling through his shots. He looked up suddenly. "Would you ever want to come to campus?" I turned off the tap. "To do what? Audit a class?" He shrugged. "Just visit, see where I live, meet my friends, maybe come to my gallery night?" The question landed like a gift. "I would love that," I said softly. He smiled. "Good, because I already told everyone you're the cool grandma who makes bomb pie." That weekend, I visited his dorm. It smelled like ramen and socks, and I adored it. He gave me a tour of the quad, introduced me to his roommate, a quiet boy named Ethan who was obsessed with lizards, and walked me through the Student Art Center. He pointed to a wall in the gallery. "That's where my final project will hang. I'm calling it Origins." The word echoed in my chest. He turned to me, a little shyly. "Would you mind if I used some of the stuff we've talked about? And maybe a few of your photos?" I touched his arm. "You can use anything you want." When I got home that night, I found an envelope taped to my door. My breath caught. I hadn't received a handwritten letter in years. I peeled it open carefully. Inside was a single page, typed. "Linda, I know you're enjoying your little resurgence. I just hope you realize the damage you're doing to this family. Some stories are better left buried." I read it twice. And then I laughed. Not bitterly, not cruelly, just laughed. Because it was proof. Proof that Emma was scared. Proof that she didn't control the story anymore. And most of all, proof that I was no longer invisible. Emma's letter sat on my desk for 2 days. I didn't reply. I didn't even move it. I left it there, not as a threat, but as a reminder. A reminder that the truth shakes people, that it shines light into the rooms where manipulation lives. And Emma, she'd built her entire house in the dark. But I wasn't going to throw stones at it. I was going to build my own house next door, made of glass with windows wide open. In the days leading up to Leo's gallery show, I started writing things down. Not for anyone in particular. Not even for Leo at first. Just for myself. A way to stitch together the fragments. I wrote about Jamie's birth, the smell of new baby lotion, and the music I played on repeat while I rocked him, James Taylor, Norah Jones. I wrote about the first time he fell off his bike, and how he insisted I clap for him before helping him up. I wrote about the time I caught him crying in the 6th grade because Emma hadn't texted him back yet. And I wrote about the silence. The years that followed his wedding, the unanswered calls, the holidays alone, the cake. Each memory I wrote as if I were archiving it in a library that no one else had access to, but someday would. I titled the folder, "For the Grandson I Almost Didn't Meet." The day of the gallery arrived with soft grey skies and the promise of rain. I wore a cream blouse, pearl earrings, and the same velvet-trimmed coat I had worn the night Jamie showed up at my door. My armor, my quiet dignity. As I entered the building, I was hit by the smell of varnish and faint citrus. Students buzzed around nervously, pinning up final captions, adjusting lighting. Leo found me first. His face lit up. "You came." "As if I'd miss it," I said. He looped his arm through mine and led me to the wall where his project hung. It was titled Origins, a Personal Excavation. The display was simple. Black and white photos framed in thin black wood, each with a line of text beneath. The first photo, Jamie as a boy, standing in a backyard, holding a frog gently in cupped hands. My father, before he became a mystery to himself. The second, a shot of a young woman's hands, manicured, holding a glass of white wine. You couldn't see her face. The mother who taught me poise, but not transparency. The third, an overhead shot of a dining table, slightly messy, flour-dusted, with handwritten recipe cards. The family I didn't know I had. The fourth, me, sitting at the table, icing a cake, mid-laugh. Truth baked gently. And at the center, the largest print of all, a diptych. On one side, Leo's face, straight to camera, raw and unfiltered. On the other, a photo of the two of us in the kitchen, side by side, arms dusted in flour, smiling like we'd always known each other. Some connections are inherited, some are discovered, and some are recovered, like breath after being underwater too long. I turned away, blinking fast. My chest ached in the way it does when joy and grief arrive together. Leo hugged me. "Thank you for giving me back part of myself," I whispered. "Thank you for bringing me forward again." Later, Jamie arrived. He stayed in the back at first. I caught his eye, and for the first time in years, I saw in him not the boy I raised or the man I'd lost, but someone new. Someone who had broken, questioned, and come back slower, but more honest. He approached the photos, hands in his pockets, staring in silence. Finally, he turned to Leo. "You did this?" Leo nodded. Jamie looked at the caption under the image of me and Leo together. Then he looked at me. "I missed so much," he said quietly. "You're here now," I replied. And he hugged me. A real hug. The kind that doesn't apologize, just holds on. Emma didn't come. Of course she didn't. But her absence wasn't loud. It wasn't bitter. It was irrelevant. Because the gallery was filled with people who had chosen to be there. Leo's friends came up to me and asked about my pie crust secrets. One girl said, "He talks about you all the time. We all want to adopt you as dorm grandma." I laughed, and I meant it. 3 weeks later, I received another letter. Not from Emma. From Jamie. A real letter, pen on paper. "Dear Mom, I've spent the last few weeks going back through my memories. I'm realizing how many of them I muted or let get reshaped. Emma didn't just push you away, she rewrote you, and I let her. I think, in some way, I wanted peace so badly, I ignored where it was costing me clarity. But you never stopped being my mother. I want to find my way back to you, not just as your son, but as a man who sees you fully. If you'll have me, I'd like to start again. Love, Jamie." I kept the letter on my bedside table for days before I replied. My answer was simple. I never stopped waiting. Come home anytime. Leo came over that weekend, and we began digitizing the family archive. Every photo, every birthday card, every letter. We created a private website, a kind of living history, one that Jamie could contribute to, and maybe someday Leo's own children would scroll through. We called it The Real Story. On what would have been my 66th birthday, Jamie and Leo threw me a dinner. They decorated my small backyard with string lights, brought folding chairs. Margaret brought deviled eggs. Leo made his first attempt at lemon meringue. It flopped, but I ate every bite. Jamie toasted me. To the woman who always left the light on, even when we forgot to knock. And I cried, but it was the good kind. The kind that makes you feel more real than you've ever been. I never did confront Emma again. She eventually moved to a different city, chasing another firm, another life. Jamie and Leo stayed. Leo visits weekly, sometimes to bake, sometimes just to sit. Jamie and I talk every Thursday morning. It's become our rhythm. And every now and then, when I open the archive, I find a new photo Leo's added. A caption, a note. Once, he uploaded a picture of me in the garden, holding a cup of tea and laughing at something off camera. Under it, he wrote, "This is the woman I came from, not by blood alone, but by truth and by choice." I'm 67 now. I grow rosemary in the yard. I bake too much. I write letters again, real ones. And I know, now more than ever, that family isn't built on blood alone. It's built on who returns. Who sees you? Who rewrites the ending with you, not around you. I was erased. And then I reappeared. Not louder, not angrier. Just visible. And this time I stayed.